longtime listeners of the show will know that Brad and I love Love Is, the classic 1970s ridiculous comic, that single panel, two naked cherubs for God knows what reason. And they're always talking about, you know, like, love is never having to clean up after yourself, whatever, you know, what, some ridiculous phrase. Today's guest hosts are super duper pal Kevin McShane. Kevin, at your wedding, what are the odds you had Love Is at your wedding?
I sure did. So, like, a little bit of context.
Okay.
It wasn't like a Love Is themed wedding, because I think
everyone
would leave.
Caveat that, exactly. Yeah.
Everyone should leave. But no, what we did was, for our reception, instead of having a dance floor, because, you know, we're all too old to be twerking on the dance floor, especially
I don't know. I brought my Megan Thee Stallion moves. I was ready to go.
Yeah, but we had a cabaret, basically, where we asked a bunch of our friends to our performer friends to, like, come and, you know, perform. We had music, we had comedy, we had magic, and then at the end of the night we had a friend of mine who is the head writer at the Stephen Colbert Late Show, do a PowerPoint. And it was a funny PowerPoint about what is love and is it worth it? And we hadn't seen anything. We didn't vet, you know, what his presentation was beforehand. So he starts talking, and, like, one of the first slides that comes up is a Love Is comic. And I don't know where you were sitting, Dave.
Well, here's what's amazing.
Yeah.
I think you, like, I saw you, like, shoot up in the crowd and, like, scan for me. You're like, David, I could see you, like, looking for me in the crowd. It was great.
Yeah. And so he used it as an example of, like, you know, all of these tropes of love, and then he ended up, you know, dissecting them and whatnot. And everybody was just
so good. He was hilarious. By the way, I love you even more as a friend, because Gloria and I, you and I didn't know each other then, but when Gloria and I got married, we also did the same thing, because none of our actor friends had a ton of money. And so we're like, listen, instead of, in lieu of gifts, like, perform at the wedding. Like, you guys do a song, you guys do a sketch, you guys do some sketch comedy, you do some stand-up, and, like, everybody came together. It was like this whole variety show. It's a great way to do a wedding.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And like I said, you know, it keeps people off the dance floor. You know, my elderly mother. Yeah. Well, my mother broke her arm 2 weeks before, not 2 weeks, like 2 months before the wedding. So she was in a full, like, cast and everything like that. And so we were trying to make sure that, you know, she didn't end up turning it into a mosh pit, you know.
Well, the whole thing was a dang delight, because to come to a wedding for your dear friend and then to see Love Is, a comic which is never featured anywhere. Like, you don't see that in modern life at all anymore. To see that featured in the wedding is bonkers crazy. So I thank you as a friend for bringing Love Is into my life again. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics
and making a living from comics. I'm Kevin McShane of KevinComics.com, filling in this week for the irreplaceable Brad Guigar, who is on special assignment.
And I'm also Kevin's friend, Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of the comics documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comic Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So David, are you listening? Let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. That was a unique one. I felt both comforted and uncomfortable by how differing that was in both voice and tone.
That's my MO.
That was so. Kevin, as everyone remembers, our dear friend of the show and also cartoonist. I'm going to say it, a polymath. But you can find Kevin's work at kevincomics.com. By the way, the word polymath, it doesn't sound like what it is. Do you know what I mean?
It absolutely does not.
Polymath sounds like it's to me, it always sounds like a stage between zygote and small tadpole. Like, well, before the frog becomes a full frog, it goes from zygote to polymath and then to polywog and then to, like, what do you understand the word polymath to mean, by the way?
You know, because it's got the word math in it, I just think it's like a way to describe, like, a mathematician, you know?
Like, I know many different forms of math. I know algebra, I know geometry, yeah,
exactly. But I do not know multiple types of math. So, you know, when people call me a polymath, I'm just like, no. Well, no, I'm not that.
You are definitely a polymath, though, in the sense that you are verbally, orally, one of the funniest and quickest people I know on your feet. You are incredible at voices. You are an
thanks.
incredible writer. You're an incredible artist. You're incredible at videography. You are amazing at so many things. So it is a delight.
You know what I'm not? You know what I'm not as good as you are at giving compliments.
Oh, zing, zam, zoom. There he is. All right. Well, let's jump right into the show. So we got our first question coming in over at patreon.com/Comic Lab from Jonathan. And Jonathan writes, Dave and Kevin, I'm gonna change his description on this one. Dave and Kevin, do you think there's going to be any more big leaps in the technology of making comics, like how digital drawing pads were a jump from physical pen and paper? Or are we most likely to see smaller and more gradual improvements on what's already there? And this is sort of a fun one to start with because it's kind of blue sky. Like you and I don't know. I got no idea what Apple's cooking up, or Wacom for that matter. But what do you think is the sort of next potential stage for how a comic could be made?
I think there's two answers. I think there's, kind of what Jonathan was talking about in terms of like the smaller gradual improvements.
Yes.
And then there's the bigger question, which to me is obviously AI. Right.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So we can get into
actually,
AI for a
that's
second,
sort of the elephant in the room behind that question. Is like, oh yeah, all these nice human improvements are great, but guess what, guys? Yeah, here comes the big behemoth.
Yeah, here comes AI. But like, no, I think a lot of companies are kind of trying to innovate with, at least within the digital, realm.
Right.
You think about Clip Studio, and every release that they have all kinds of like new features and whatnot. Like they have this thing now where it can use your webcam to scan your hand, and you can use your hand as like a pose reference. It's amazing. It's really cool. So like if you have like a very specific hand,
what my immediate first thought was? Someone's going to do that with their wiener. That's what my immediate 100%. First thought was. You know how technology always gets used in that way. Someone immediately is going to go, hey, I wonder if I could scan my wiener with this.
Look, Dave, I'm not saying I haven't tried it, but yeah, I mean, there's also like there was this app that Adobe was working on. I don't know if you remember reading about it. It was called Comic Blast. Do you remember that?
No. What was it?
So they announced it like in 2020, and I think they've like since abandoned it.
Was it a pandemic child where it's like it just went by the wayside?
Yeah, pretty much. And so, but I remember like reading about it, and I went back because of this question, and I like looked it up, and it was actually really, really interesting. What it did was it basically used a lot of like Adobe's automation technology in order to like automate kind of the grunt work of comics. The demo that they did was they took a script that was broken up and tagged with like description and, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, dialogue and everything like that. Brought it into the app, and then with one click, it did an auto layout of the screen. Or of the page. So you had the panels, you had, the word balloons, with each character, like, pointing which way it was going and everything. And if you didn't like that layout, it generated other layouts, or you could like move the panel borders and things like that.
Right.
And it was interesting. Like it did everything except for the actual drawing. Right. You still had to do the actual drawing.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like it did the grunt work. That's true in what it was doing. Okay, yeah.
But then they did like a bunch of other things where like with the artwork, you could import a black and white sketch, and it could basically auto trace it and like auto ink it for you. Yeah, and like the technology was not great, but like it did do the job, and it also like auto colored it and whatnot. But then like the really wild thing is that it had like facial recognition technology in it, and it could like see your characters' faces, and then you could pop up your webcam, make a face, turn a pose or something like that, and it would change the character's face.
What?
Yeah. So it was,
and this was pre-AI, so it must not have been great. I'm imagining.
I mean, I think it was like very much like early stages of it.
Although I guess no, because pre-AI, Apple had those, what were they called, the emojis that would react to your face. Mm-hmm. So you had to kind of make an extreme face, like eyebrow heavily up, and then the emoji wouldn't do the eyebrow heavily. But you're right, that did exist as it would sort of map human markers on a face. So that's cool technology. The way I see the next sort of human-drawn digital technology happening is actually in the VR space. And I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Interesting. Okay.
So Photoshop specifically was revolutionary in our lifetime I remember specifically 25 years ago when someone explained to me, oh, well, you can choose a different brush. And I was like, and really go back mentally to when like digital drawing applications were very new, very nascent.
Right.
And I was like, wait, I don't understand a different kind of brush. It's still this same cursor. And they're like, no. Now it's a paintbrush. Now you have charcoal. Now you have pencil, right? And so the way I see a real innovation in VR, like imagine a 10-year-old puts on VR goggles and their VR hand no longer is holding a pencil. It's now holding a paintbrush, or it's now holding chalk, or it's now holding charcoal, right? Like for those of us who have taken art classes, it's a very different approach in how you hold or draw a thing when you're holding charcoal versus holding, you know, a Renaissance paintbrush, you know, those giant ones that are like 18 inches long. And so I feel like that might be a cool innovation, that you would get more of a sensory feedback of like, oh, this is a different way to make a mark digitally because I'm doing it with an 18-inch paintbrush versus a 2-inch piece of charcoal that I'm cupping in my hands, you know, or in my fingers. Yeah. So like I could see VR being kind of cool, maybe, for that, if it didn't give me massive headaches all the time. So like, I don't know how they're going to solve that latency, but anyway. But I'm the kind of person, my brain, I don't know about you, but as a side note, my brain-eye coordination, I'm like, oh, VR, this is so fun. Then an hour afterward, I'm just ringing headache for like 24 hours. It's just brutal.
Yeah, I've tried a little bit of VR, and I've actually tried like a drawing program in VR. You know, they actually have one where you can like draw in 3D space, which is really cool.
Oh, do they? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Sort of like Picasso with the light thing. Yeah, okay.
100%. Yeah, there's actually a great video with Glenn Keane, who's a Disney animator, and he's in the VR space and he draws the Little Mermaid in a VR space. It's really, really cool. And I've tried it, and I don't know, it's fine. You know,
I like how I'm like, this is going to be amazing. It'll be so innovative. You're like, oh, it exists. I've tried it. It's kind of a piece of shit. It's not great.
Well, because like, how do you see that plugging into like sequential art, into like comics?
Like, for example, okay, so Drive Sci-Fi. I draw 90% of it with one brush. Like much like all of us, I'm a creature of habit. I have a brush that I like. I use that brush. But let's say if I want to do smoke or star forms or, you know, I don't know, scratchy lines of dirt exploding in the air, I'll go to a different brush. And my thought was it would be nice for younger artists to have more of an hand to eye to brain link of like, oh, the brush looks different because the physical object that I'm holding to make this mark looks different. You know what I mean? At 50, I get it now. Like I know why the brush makes a different mark. It's because I've used charcoal in the past or I've used a brush in the past. So I get it. But like kids that are coming up now that kind of were trained to draw on iPads, also pens and inks, but iPads, they might not have that same hand to eye to brain connection of like, oh, it's making a different mark because charcoal is a fundamentally different object than a paintbrush or than a sponge or that, you know what I mean? Like the mark is different because the object is different that you're using to make the mark. And so when VR can replicate, but maybe you're right. Maybe it's not that big a deal. Maybe it won't help that much.
So you're talking about like basically just getting rid of the screen and just kind of making it an immersive experience where you can just kind of like draw on. You're still drawing in 2 dimensions, but it's more tactile.
Like, for example, let's say that there is a VR studio that I walk into, and it's like, let's just for giggles and say, let's just say it looks like a 16th century Italian Renaissance studio. You know, a lot of woods, a lot of stones. Or maybe there's a little wine next to me, Kevin. That's lovely. There's a small Labrador purring at my feet. He's had a good walk. Let's just make this beautiful. There's sunlight coming in. It's Tuscany. By the way, Tuscany is outside. This is a great environment. So I'm about to make a comic that's been pinned to a VR easel, right? And next to me is like 30 different physical objects in VR. Like that's what I was getting at. Is that like I'm making a 2D object still, and I'm drawing in 2D. But I'm using VR 3D objects. But I don't know that makes any difference. Who knows?
This isn't so much like your dream for the future as it is just like the future of comics, as it is just your general dream for like your retirement. You know what I mean?
Kevin, I want to go to Tuscany. Damn it. Why can't we make this happen? I just want to draw in Tuscany. Total side note. Angoulême, France, which has the huge Angoulême Comics Festival. They also do an artist in residence. And
Right.
I'll be honest, I don't speak French. I kind of want to do that. That seems rad to me.
Yeah.
Be the artist in residence in a small little medieval town of Angoulême. So again, it all comes back to my VR dreams. It all comes back to I just want to live in Europe in a nice stone thing with sun coming through and drawing with charcoal. That's what I want.
You don't need VR for that, Dave. You don't need VR for that.
I just need a lot of money. That's all I need. But I mean, as far as digital, like, to get back to the question asker's question, to me, what's unique about 2D comics is I think they have largely survived the coming of video. I think they've largely survived the coming of video games, largely survived the coming of VR, because there's something that the human brain still likes about sequential images in 2D, bang, 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 right next to each other. Like, it's still pleasing to us in the same way that the novel didn't go away when TV came along. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's a format that, you know, just kind of stands the test of time because it's so simple. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you don't need technology in order to create it. You don't need technology to enjoy it, you know?
Yeah. And this is possibly the shittiest capitalist way to describe it, but it's infinitely consumable. Like, you can, you need no explanation. Bang, you're right in and you're right out. You know, you're right back, especially with the scroll, you consume and you're on your way. Whereas, you know, when you're reading a New York Times article and it says 8-minute read, you're like, do I have 8 minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. There's only so much time in this life, Kevin. You know,
exactly.
Like a comic is infinitely consumable. And so, I don't know that anything coming I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know that anything coming technology-wise will ultimately impact the format of the comic itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think just the way that you make it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, on that note, I'm going to jump us into our next question over at patreon.com/comiclab. This comes in from Joe Iconic, which is, come on, how can you, you can't argue with that name, Joe Iconic. I love it. So Joe writes in, how would you market your comics differently if compensation wasn't an immediate goal? If you just wanted to share your content and had time to build your fan base? This is a fun one. I don't know that we've gotten this one before.
Yeah.
In terms of it's sort of art for art's sake, or the joy of art, or the joy of sharing art as a human to other humans. Right. What are your thoughts about this one, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I love this question because it's actually right up my alley, because it's kind of where I am at the moment. You know, I'm on like about year 5 of my comic, and I don't have enough strips for a book yet, so there's no Kickstarter. I have a Patreon, but it's basically just kind of a tip jar, you know, because I don't have time to make, you know, bonus content for it. So I'm still very much in kind of the audience building mode. And also I have a day job, you know, so that, you know, that limits the amount of time that I can dedicate to it.
Sure.
So I'm not thinking immediately about monetization and, you know, making money and whatnot. I'm just making comics at this point, just to build an audience and just for the love of the game, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, my strategy is basically I'm just focusing on my mailing list, on building my mailing list. You know, that is my number one, you know, goal in terms of marketing, is just building that mailing list. And so, the way that I do it is I will typically draw, for any comic, I will draw a 5th panel, a bonus panel that lives only on my website. I don't post it to social media or anything like that. It's just on my website. And then whenever I post on social media or anything, any place that allows me to link out in comments, I will link to my site directly to the bonus panel. And so people, when they go, they will click on it. It'll jump right to the bonus panel. And right below the bonus panel is the sign up form for my mailing list, you know, and the pitch is the same pitch, you know, that you guys use, where it's, you know, it's based on FOMO. It's just, hey, social media is not showing you all of my comics. You know, so if you want them directly to your inbox, go ahead and sign up.
Right.
And that's been pretty successful at this point. Reddit is actually the biggest driver.
You do very well on Reddit, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just the nature of, you know, the type of comics that I make.
Sure.
But like, I make sure that as soon as I post on Reddit, I make sure that I'm the first comment, and my comment is just a link to the bonus panel.
Yes. Yeah.
And that seems to drive people to the to the site.
Well, can I pause you, because it would actually be helpful, I think, for listeners to get a holistic idea of where and when you post and all that sort of stuff. So,
Sure.
so that I can give some background, Kevin has been producing amazing comics for 20 plus years. Kevin Comics have been going for 5 years, and that's just a reminder for everyone, kevincomics.com, in case you want to look at it while we're talking.
Nice.
Where else do you post? What's the like? Give everybody like, okay, I go to Reddit, I go to Blue Sky, I go to Twitter. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I go everywhere, basically. And, I tailor it based on, the platform. So what do I do? I do Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Imgur,
Imgur,
Mastodon.
Wow, okay. We'll come back to that. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
No, don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on it. It's like a nicer Reddit. It's
Imgur?
not as,
all right.
Yeah, it's not as toxic.
Okay.
At least in my comments. I do Blue Sky, Mastodon, Twitter, the Instagram. Yeah, I go
do
everywhere,
Threads?
basically. I do threads.
Okay, so by my count on my hands, that was 8 or 9. I kind of got distracted, but eight or 9 places that you're posting, in addition to the website, in addition to the mailing list, which is also fed up and ready to shoot it out.
It's a lot.
So that's 10 plus places. By the way, I'm not at all taking a shot at that. That's what you got to do in terms of this modern world of fractured social media. I have a lot of questions to build off on this. So, first of all, Imgur, what? Okay, let's go to that one, because Brad and I don't talk about Imgur ever. So give me the 10-second pitch on why I should be posting on Imgur.
Like I said, it's like a nicer Reddit. It's smaller than Reddit, obviously, so you're not going to get as much traffic, but the commenters are nicer. And you can do the same thing where you can link out in both the description and in the comments. And so that ends up, driving a portion of people to my website for signups.
Okay. Can I sound like a grandfather for a second? What is Imgur? What is it? Like, okay, so I've always seen like a link to an Imgur post, and I was like, oh, it's like a video, it's a photo file hosting service. But there's also a social media aspect to it? Question mark.
Well, that's what it started off as. It started off back when Reddit didn't have its own native image hosting.
Right, that's right.
It was like
the kind of semi-official one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the go-to that everyone used to post, and then Reddit got its own and didn't like it when people posted from Imgur. But then what Imgur did was it basically made a front page that aggregated posts, for the day. Kind of like Reddit. But it's all image-based. And so, it's just an image-based, smaller Reddit that lets you link out. And they
do let you, that was going to be my next question, is they let you link out. All right. Well, all right. Color me surprised. I did not know that was worthwhile. So, okay, great. So the next thing I want to ask you is, so you post all these, you're building for your mailing list. You're doing exactly what this question asker was seeking. Give me your level of excitement or satisfaction on an average day when one clicks or doesn't click, or like, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is the question behind the question is, what are your motivations on a day-to-day basis? Is it, I gotta get 40 more for the first book, and then I'm in business? Or is it, I hope this does well on social media? Or like, you know what I'm saying here? I want 20 more signups from my mailing list. Which one is the one for you?
Well, the public answer is, I'm just trying to get to, a certain number of strips so that way I can kickstart a book. The private answer is that it's for the validation. I'm not gonna lie, it's for the validation.
There's two friends talking. Yeah, that's fine. I get it. Yeah,
exactly. Basically, there's a hole inside of me. And I'm trying to fill it with likes from people that I've never met. And so far, I think if I get some more, I just may get there.
I just might find fulfillment, Coach. Put me in one more time. I think 400 more likes. I might just like myself today. Yeah, exactly. No, I get it. Well, on a fun separate note, by your own approximation, how many more comics do you need for that first book?
Oh, well, let me ask you, because at what point did you do your first Sheldon book?
That's a great question. So books come, depending on how you want to look at it, in chunks of either 16-page or 8-page folios. So it's always multiples of 8. And I looked at the smallest book I ever did was just north of 100 pages, I think, right? And that felt a little slim. It starts to feel like, oh, solid, good stuff when it's somewhere in the 130 pages, right? Like as a soft cover. You could also cheat that by getting, and this is little trade industry secrets, getting a more expensive and thicker paper, a more expensive and thicker cover. And honestly, just those little tricks make a 130-page book feel like a 150-page book. But it doesn't cost you that much more. Sometimes cheaper, actually, depending on what the market.
Okay, but how many strips per page?
Okay, so that was going to be my next thing. Is that in my early comic, I was like, oh, I need ultimate value for the reader. Every page has to have 3 comic strips, like Garfield did, or I gotta like if there's a half-inch empty on this page, I got to put a comic in there, you know, like that kind of thing. And I came to realize as I got older, it's actually quite acceptable. 1 comic per page, turn the page, another comic on that page, turn the page, another comic on that page. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world to have very legible, well-printed single comics, especially ones like yours, like Kevin Comics, which can tend to be presented in page formatty, display, for folks that kind of get what I'm saying there. I don't know that you would need to put 2 on a page, like 1 per page. So that on a spread, you're seeing 2 Kevin Comics.
Yeah, because I look at a lot of other younger cartoonists who kind of came up on Instagram and in webcomics that way, and they're totally fine just doing 1 square strip per page. Yep. Like I look at Sarah Anderson's last book, and it's 1 strip per page, maybe a bonus panel. You know what I mean? Right. And I'm like, well, it works for her. So maybe, right now I'm at about a little over 130 strips.
Oh, you're fine.
But listen, Dave, maybe 60 of them are good.
Okay. Now that I relate to that. Listen. Okay. Yes. All right. Yeah. You're like, of that, I've got 10 that could really hold the book.
Well, okay. Because let me ask you this. Like when you are doing a Sheldon strip, do you just automatically assume that this strip will be in the next book?
No, absolutely not. Nope, not anymore. Yeah. I did when I was starting. I was like, everyone is a gem. Each one is a precious angel baby. And now I'm like, I've done 5,000 comics. Like, even by the next week, you're like, that one's not going in the book. The one that I did last Monday. Like, you're like, I don't know what I was thinking. That one wasn't very good.
And I think about that all the time because
sometimes when I finish a comic, by the way, as soon as I put the pen down, I go, that's not going in the book. That's fine.
But I'm sitting there and I'm like, even when I'm like writing and stuff like that, I'm just like, oh, well, this will do well on social media right now. But in 6 months, no one's going to get this reference. Yes. It's not going to go in the book. Right. You know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah, it's that balance of like the long term versus like the short term.
Absolutely. Like 6 years from now, is anyone going to remember what CrowdStrike is? No. Okay. So this joke that I made, no one's got, like, it did great on social media because everybody's servers were down yesterday, but no one cares, that kind of thing. Yes. Yeah. So agreed. But as far as the book goes, I think, and this is maybe helpful to no one, but just specifically Kevin, have you thought about doing this where on the right, so mentally look at the spread of a book that's open in front of you on the right facing page. What if that was the comic and then you flip the page over? So now you're looking at the left facing page and that's just the bonus panel. Would that be fun to do?
That's fun. That's fun.
Because then you could get like a 200-page book out of 130 comics, right?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Because the reveal on the page flip is kind of what the click is on a bonus panel, right?
Sure. Wow. Did we just stumble on a
new format? Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, it is kind of because here's why I say this. A bonus panel is technically a hat on a hat. Like you don't want it to sit underneath the comic because then it feels like it's part of the comic. That's not what a bonus panel is. It's a very unique kind of format thing. And the page flip lets you go, okay, that was a holistic comic right there. I'm going to do a page flip. Oh, there's the hat on the hat. That's fun,
Yeah. I was thinking about doing an ebook called Oops, All Bonus Panels, where it's just the bonus panels out of context.
Oh, God.
So it's just punchlines and no setup. And it's just like, what is happening?
I love the idea that the bonus panel is all non sequitur. Like it's just a duck and a rabbi and they're going, not with my jelly bellies. And you're like, what? What is this? What's happening? That's fun. But yeah, I mean, I think the good news is separate from any helpful advice on the show, I think you're not far from your first book, which is an exciting time for any comic. But it's worth mentioning to everyone listening, that's probably at the 6-year mark for Kevin doing this title. And it's not untrue what Brad and I always say, which is this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to take Kevin the better part of 5 to 7 years to have gotten to that first book. But with love and joy and passion, like, and he did all the right things along the way in terms of building the mailing list, keeping social media feeds going, building the overall awareness for the audience. So when it comes time to kickstart, that book is ready to go. Anyway, I just want to remind people that it's not an overnight thing. Like, here is somebody with decades of comics experience. Like I said, a polymath, incredibly talented, one of the funniest guys Brad and I know. And, it still takes a hot minute, doesn't it, to get to that first book?
It does. It does. It definitely does.
Well, so, okay, let's go back to that question asker one last time. Let's see if there's any other things to be gotten from that well. So how would you make your
how would you do it? Because, you've been chasing the monetization for such a long time.
Yes.
Like, what would you do if you couldn't monetize?
This is a great question, because, and I think I can speak for Brad on this too, is that this is going to sound so like I've suddenly become the Monopoly man when I say this, but I kind of don't draw anymore unless I can make money from it. And that's a kind of a sad statement if you think about it in terms of a human life. But also, I mean, I have to draw so much stuff on my average week that's like, why would I draw extra stuff? You know what I mean? Like, if I draw a piece on a plane flying from LA to New York, that piece is going to go up on eBay. And if that piece was good enough, I'll scan it and put it at the back of a book for, bonus content or on Patreon. So, like, I find ways to use everything. And so a little bit, I feel like that old Far Side joke where they would hold up that one, it's like a Lakota guy, and he's holding up the one piece of the buffalo that they don't use, you know what I mean? And it's this one like weird looking organ. But that's a little bit how I feel like by comics, is that I have been so capitalized in my mindset that I've kind of lost a little bit of what you have, which is the art for art's sake and joy for joy's sake with comics. That's a little extreme, because so you're saying you have a joyless life? Is that what we're saying? Well, that's a little extreme, because I'm actually one of the happiest artists I know. Like, I very much love what I do, and I love my life, and I love that my comics pay for the rent and all that sort of stuff. But there is, I will be honest, I've sort of lost the art for art's sake. Like, I haven't picked up my painting easel in 30 years. I don't do, having said I learned how to draw with charcoal. I don't draw with charcoal anymore because there's no way I can monetize that. Like, that's kind of shitty if I think about it, Well, here's my challenge for you then. Don't say draw for fun's sake. Don't do it, Kevin. Don't do it as a friend. I'm asking you. No. But here's the thing. I'm gonna make it precious. I'm gonna send you a sketchbook, and this is a sketchbook that no one is allowed to see. Oh, okay. Where's this going? Okay. And all I want you to do is I want you to fill it with drawings. And when you're done with it, maybe you send it to me, or maybe you just put it in just in a drawer or something like that. Okay, we've accidentally stumbled onto a real psychological block for Dave Kellett here, because you saying that, I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. Nope, that seemed and I'm not kidding. I didn't think that this question would lead to this place, but I can't draw for fun anymore. It seems like such a waste of time, because having drawn all week, Kevin, I work on Drive, I work on Sheldon, do this other stuff, or all this other stuff. And like, when I get to the end of my week, I'm like, I want to spend time with my family, or I want to play a video game, or I want to go for a bike ride. I don't want to draw anymore, That's fair. So that's fair. Maybe I threw myself under the bus. It's not unreasonable for me to be like, I don't want to draw for fun. I draw a week for work, So. Right. Anyway, as far as what I would do differently if compensation wasn't a goal, though, this is an interesting question. Would I draw Drive any differently? And I think I draw it at the exact pace and the exact way I would draw it if there was no compensation involved. Interesting. So that I'm happy about. I think if compensation wasn't an immediate goal, I've never done it, but I might release more pencil sketches of half-thought comics, like, have you ever done that where you're like, get it out? Yeah. Like, I don't know that this is full comic material, but I'd like to just get this idea out. Sure, yeah. I don't tend to do that anymore. I did it at the beginning of Twitter, like 10 years ago or whatever. But I think I might, because those are more just comics for comics' sakes or fun for fun's sake kind of things, and I don't tend to do that anymore. That might be how I would change. But okay, let me ask you just one. I know that we're beating a dead horse, but just flipping the question on its head. If you were making Kevin comics for compensation, or you knew that you were trying to get to compensation, how would you change what you're doing? Would it be at all different?
I mean, in this day and age, I would, you know what I would do? I would quit my day job.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
And just dedicate, you know, because you guys talk about like, you know, when you were in your 20s and, you know, you had day jobs, but you were working nights and weekends and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have that type of stamina anymore. So like, I couldn't do that. So like the only way that I could dedicate that amount of time to it would be to quit my day job.
Right.
And hope that I can monetize it in time before the savings run out, you know?
God, that got bleak real quick.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, that got a very Game of Thrones ending. Like, I mean, the dragon's coming. I don't know if I can do it in time. But yeah, I take your point. That's interesting. You would quit your day job. So would it change at all your relationship with Kevin Comics if the Patreon was making the monthly rent and the Kickstarters were contributing on an annual basis to that monthly rent? How would that mentally change your approach to the comic?
Well, just from a production standpoint, I would obviously, you know, want to put out more, and right, you know, but also from a creative standpoint, I think it would also kind of give me license to build out the world of the strip more, right? You know, with like additional characters and like a little more context and everything like that. Because right now it's a pretty contextless strip. It's pretty much just a pure gag strip, right? And so like, you know, increasing output, you know, in order to make money and whatnot, I could have an opportunity to expand the world and make it a little more fleshed out and everything, which seems like a wonderful luxury. So.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Well, speaking of making the rent, it's probably a good time for me to do an update and mention newdrivebook.com, kickstarting now. That's an awkward transition, isn't it? Kevin's like, I'm going to just do it for the love of it, the joy of it. Meanwhile, Dave's over here be like shaking a cup with 2 pennies at the bottom. Like, hey, everybody, check out newdrivebook.com.
I want you to do that again, and I want you to do it with confidence, with that Dave Kellett confidence.
Okay,
all right?
Here comes the patented Dave Kellett confidence. Hey, gang, it's time once again to mention an amazing Kickstarter going on.
No, what is happening?
All right. No. Starting third time's the charm. Here we go. With a smile on my face, I'm going to say, my dear friends, I am so incredibly excited to mention that a book that I am super proud of is kickstarting right now. It's the Act 4 hardcover for Drive over at newdrivebook.com. It is gorgeous. The hardcovers come out amazing. We are hopefully on the way towards the stretch goals, which will unlock all sorts of physical improvements to the book. I cannot tell you how much joy this story brings me. So go check it out over at newdrivebook.com. And I hope you'll consider jumping in. It is my favorite thing I have ever made. How about that, Kevin? Was that better?
That was fantastic. And I'm already a backer, you know, so, you know, just join me.
I love that. That was more sort of the men's hair club version. I was like, I got to tell you, I love the comic so much. I'm a backer. I don't just read it free online. I'm a backer. No, thank you for that, Kevin. I am legitimately, of the documentary, of Sheldon, of anything that I've ever done, Drive is my favorite thing that I have ever made. Yeah. And I think when I am on my deathbed, that's the thing that I will look back on and be like, oh, I'm glad I added that to the world. That was fun. I'm really proud of the story. So do check it out.
Not the kids.
Wow.
Okay, that's fine.
Wow.
That's fine.
You didn't have to make it that angle. Jeez Louise. Jeez Louise. Oh man, you could have just kept it in the creative sphere. Now I have to like pace the hallway like, did I mean it that way? Is that how I feel? Oh God. No, obviously that's not true. The kids are more important. Jeez Louise, don't do that to me. But I will just say newdrivebook.com. So anyway,
newdrivebook.com. newdrivebook.com. Yeah.
All right. So this next question is a longer one. So give me a second to read this one out. This also comes over at patreon.com/comiclab. And it's from Jody. And Jody writes, thank you all so much. By the way, this is for you specifically, Kevin. Thank you all so much for your dedication to helping folks like me step up another rung on our cartooning ladders. Really appreciate your effort, insights, and useful guidance, Kevin, that I've learned so much from. Thank you so much. And then Jody goes on to say, I create gardening advice cartoons. Oh, that's very cool. Which impart practical advice mixed with a little humor. I found that I need about 8 or 9 panels to create something useful, which is fine for a printed book, but is it pushing the boundaries of social media attention spans? I can't find a way to reduce the number of panels without compromising the usefulness of the content. Should I just stick with what works for me, or should I consider other options? And if so, what are they? So this is a fun question because Kevin and I have both over our careers produced what I would call, I don't know, infomatic comics. They're sort of like, or infotainment, where they are both getting to a punchline or doing a character arc or having a satisfying ending. But in 2 to 4 of the panels, or maybe you might learn a little something along the way, right? I mean, you've made comics like that, haven't you, Kevin?
I have. And, you know, I think her answer is in her question, to be honest. Yeah. You know, she says, I can't find a way to reduce the number of panels without compromising the usefulness of the content. And I totally get the impulse to, you know, to scale it back in order to make it more shareable. But so let me couch this in terms of sharing.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So at BuzzFeed, and I talked about this when I was on the show like a long time ago, but basically like at BuzzFeed, we talked about there are 4 major types of shares when it comes to social media. There's the identity share, there's informational share, there's the emotional gift, and there's the aspirational, right?
Could you do me a favor? Could you give a quick example for what each of those 4 are?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So like for the identity share, it's anything that speaks to your own specific identity. You know, the share statement is, this is so me, you know? Right. Okay. So it's like, you know, I'm a skateboarder, or I'm like a clumsy person, or, you know, I'm from the Midwest or something like that. And so this speaks to, you know, my identity. Right. The informational share is what we're talking about here. You know, it's something that gives you some information. You know, it's usually like news articles, things like that. The share statement is like, I found this interesting, or like, this proved me right, or something like that. Right. And then just real quick, like emotional gift is mostly like memes and stuff. And so it's like, this made me feel this way. I want you to feel this way. Right.
It's also potentially like really heavily leaning on the saccharine, or that kind of a feeling like, hey, here's a cat that makes you feel like, right. Or it
can, but anger is also an emotional gift.
Oh, you know that's like, true. Especially with political shares. Yeah. You should be angry about this too. Yeah.
And then the last one, aspirational. That's the, I want to do this. I want to go here. It's mostly for like food videos and like travel videos and stuff like that.
But also workout videos of like, someday I'm going to get to this kind of 6-pack too kind of thing. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, totally. And so we found that like the best content were ones that hit multiple different types of shares.
Like a 4-quadrant kind of a feeling, like TV, and the way the TV describes it. Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
You got it. And you know, I haven't read Jody's comic, but from the pitch, sounds dynamite.
It kind of does. Like, it's exactly what you want in a comic. Yes.
Right. You know, I'm going to learn something about gardening, and it's going to be funny. That's great. So like, to me, it sounds like she's hitting all 3 of like, so she's probably hitting like identity, information, like emotional gift, right? So
yes, I was thinking the same thing. Yep.
Right. So it's like, if you're a gardener, you're like, this speaks to me. I love this. I'm going to share it. Right. If it's, you know, and you get the information, like we talked about, it's the practical gardening advice. And then the emotional gift is humor. This made me laugh, so I'm going to share it. Right. So I think what it sounds like is happening here is that Jody is kind of trying to change that mix a little bit.
Right.
So it's less away from the informational and maybe more towards like the emotional gift or, or the identity or something like that. And I'm really hesitant to tell her to like change it.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Right. Because it's like the type of content that works really well has like some utility behind it.
Right.
And when you start to lose that utility, you have less of a reason to share.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like you, I think the thing that makes this special is actually the exact format that she has for it. Mm-hmm. And that I'm going to say, Jody, and this is putting words in your mouth, so don't feel free to internalize this if this is not the case. But I feel like you're a little bit feeling what I often feel when I see a comic go viral online, which is grass is always greener on the other side. So, for example, on Reddit, you'll very often see a single panel comic, let's say, that has the energy of a 20-year-old guy go really viral on Reddit because that's the specific energy on Reddit. And so my comic about a 50-year-old man enjoying his tea doesn't go as well because it's like, it's kind of not that audience and it's kind of not that format for that. So what I'm getting at, though, is that I can sense that maybe in your questioning, you're feeling like, yeah, my format works and I can't make it smaller, but surely the grass is greener if I could do X, Y, Z with my format. But the thing is, what makes you is this unique infotainment mix of like, you're going to learn about gardening. You're going to find a way to dive into a topic that you love, gardening, but in a totally new genre, comics, totally new format, comics. And you're going to laugh at the end of it, or you're going to get a little wry smile out of it, or you're going to get something out of it. Like that, to me, first of all, Jody, I think Kevin will agree with this, that like, you got no competition. I can't imagine that there's like 50 other cartoonists that are like, well, my gardening comic is better than Jody's. Like, you have this locked up. I think at this point now, and this is going to sound a little shitty, it's really just a 5-year march to getting it better known among the gardening community. But the specialness of this is really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you guys always talk about, it's about finding passionate fans.
Yes, yes. Gardeners like fans. Oh my God, those books sell like hotcakes all the time.
Oh, totally. So like, it's not the same like top of Reddit, casual fans, everybody sharing it around. It's a more small, dedicated, passionate, audience that will really, really love and really, really respond to what you're doing.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I say don't if it ain't broke.
Yeah. And I'll give you some more optimistic angles on this, Jody, which is that, we jokingly said it a second ago, that sort of TV, the 4 quadrants of old, young, male, female, and which ones do you tick off? Here's the great news for your eventual book sales, Jody. You click off 2 of the quadrants of older men, older women. And I'm not shitting you on this, homeowners, because if you're gardening, you're most likely owning a home. So you most likely have disposable income, and you're most likely of an age that will love and collect books. These are broad swaths, broad strokes. This is not necessarily true for all of your readers, but I'm saying like, once you click with these people, Jody, you're going to find on year 5, 6, 7, 8, roughly where Kevin is about to become with his first book, that you're really well positioned, I feel like, with an audience that has disposable income. Am I wrong to say that, Kevin?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I will point out that this is the craven capitalist in you coming out.
Oh, my God. Kevin could see. Oh, my God. I just was taking a big swig of coffee. Damn it. Now I have coffee up the nose. That is painful. Oh, it's kind of an espresso-based coffee, so it's sharp on the nostrils. Oh, Kevin, you bastard. You're right. That was a I can't shake it. I can't shake it. It's always the capitalist angle on it. Because you know what I want for Jody? I want Jody to make $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on her first book. 100%. You know what I mean? That's what I want for her. Because I see in Jody's title a gardening comic, 8 or 9 panels, page format, satisfying ending, hopefully a joke at the end. That's a version of the success that Kate Beaton found with her historic comics. Like going for an older, better educated audience that probably had disposable income, loved a niche topic, Loved it a lot, and loved that it was spun with humor at the end. I mean, Jody, this is a potentially, I'm just saying, as a guy that loves comics, I've never heard of this before, and I'm excited for you that this is your passion.
Keep going, Jody. Keep going.
Well, moving us on to our last question for the day. This comes in from Kevin Zoldan over at patreon.com, which, by the way, Zoldan, that is the greatest last name ever, Kevin.
Hell
congratulations. Yeah. You won every last name contest going. That's an amazing name. That's right. I love that. Zoldan.
It sounds like a Green Lantern planet name. You know?
Yes, it does. Yes. Or, a superhero from a 1980s kids Saturday afternoon comic, you know, the Mighty Zoldan. I hope we're pronouncing it right, by the way. Kevin, if we're totally butchering it, you're like, to hell with these two guys, then go to hell. We're just saying you're cool, Kevin. That's what we just want to be you. That's what it is. All right. So Kevin's question comes in and says, hey, y'all, I love the idea about making Substack the new email list. I'm going to treat it like a zine from old school days. I'll do interviews with other creators, that sort of thing. Any advice on interviewing other creators? This is perfect for my polymath friend Kevin, by the way, because Kevin has done all sorts of interviews and interview adjacent media over the years for BuzzFeed and other projects. So Kevin, what have been your go-tos for how to interview a fellow creative person?
Really the only one piece of advice that I would give is just do your research.
Yes. You know? Yes.
Yeah. Because and when I say that, I mean obviously you should be aware of the body of work of the person that you're interviewing. But also like look at other interviews that they've given, what they like to talk about, things like that. My last couple of years at BuzzFeed, I shared offices with the Hot Ones team. And do you know Hot Ones?
Yes, I love Hot Ones, by the way.
Yeah.
Their research, by the way, they find some obscure facts from people.
Exactly. And that's why guests love to be on that show, is because they ask the questions that these celebrities never get asked. Because they've done, the research. And so my advice would be like, if you're interviewing a fellow comic book artist or comic artist, you can ask them, where do you get your ideas? Where do you, what tools do you use? Like stuff like you can, but they get asked that if they get interviewed, they get asked that all the time.
Right.
So the more interesting thing is to do a little deep dive. You got to kind of be a little stalkery. You got to kind of, look them up, see like, where they went to high school or, what they majored in college and stuff like that. And then kind of extrapolate your questions from there. And you'll get much better responses from somebody who is engaged and answering questions that they've never asked before.
And I will find, speaking of stalking, like, let's say I wanted to do research on Kevin. The thing is, and I'm not being a creep, I'm just saying like, really advanced Boolean searches in Google will help you with that. So if I know that Kevin, his most famous article was with Newsweek in 2004, right? So I'll do Kevin McShane minus Newsweek.com minus whatever that link is. Like what I'm saying is you got to find the obscure interviews that they did 20 years ago if you really want to find the fun stuff, because much like Hot Ones, everyone appreciates that the interviewer has done their footwork. It is a truth universal that, just like Dale Carnegie said, people love to hear the sound of their own name. It's like the sweetest sound in the universe to them. Interviewees love it when they know that they're in safe hands and that you have looked them up. You've read everything about them. You've known past responses, because they know they don't have to explain themselves. Because people, it's one thing to do an interview. It's another thing to sort of have to defend yourself or be like, no, that's not who I am. No, that's not, I never worked on that project. Why did you even bring that up? That kind of thing. Like, it makes them put their guard up or their hackles up when they feel like, I don't trust this interviewer to handle my life correctly,
Yeah, 100%. Another example that I would give you besides Hot Ones to take a look at is, have you ever heard of Nardwuar?
No, what is it? Okay.
Nardwuar, he is the human serviette. He interviews musicians, and he's been doing it on YouTube for, gosh, I don't know, over 10 years now at this point. And look him up. He is a interesting fellow. Let's put it that way. He has a very interesting look and a very interesting demeanor for asking questions.
Okay. The self-description of human serviette, I don't know what to make of that. I'm not quite sure where...
That's what he says. It's self-applied.
What a weird nom de plume. Like, what does that mean? Question mark? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but it works. And like when you see him, you're like,
oh, he's a human serviette. Yeah,
he's a human serviette. But there's also like there's supercuts of his interviews where he's asking, the celebrities and musicians about their really obscure music tastes. Like he'll ask like Jay-Z, like, I hear you're a fan of like this, like very like obscure hip hop artist. And he's like, how did you know that? And so he just does an incredible amount of research, and he's also very knowledgeable about music. And so, yeah, and he's just super engaging. So you should definitely look him up. Nardwuar is his name.
Nardwuar. Also, what does the name mean? As someone who's ignorant to the whole thing, what does Nardwuar mean?
No idea.
All right. Well, this has been a fun, journey across the internet.
Just let it flow. Over
yeah.
you,
by the way, that's
just
fun.
Let it go. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, too, when possible, and listen, I'm not saying that I'm a great interviewer or even a good interviewer, but what I've noticed is that bringing joy and respect to the interview in the sense of like, this is not a format for you to be on the showcase. This is you giving the courtesy to your guests to be on the showcase. So to do that with joy and to do it with the respect that this person has given their time to be on your platform. And so you're going to mention kevincomics.com, and you're going to mention that you need to go check it out because he's one of your favorite cartoonists, because it's both true and it's respectful to them as a guest. You right?
Oh, well, that's too kind of you. That's too kind of you.
It's no, but I think that's true. I think good research, giving them the platform, also helping them in a way that they are sometimes going to be nervous. They are sometimes going to be felt to be put on the spot. So helpful guiding questions and basically being the sturdy hand in the process of like, you're safe. This is a safe space. We're not going to letting them know beforehand. I'm not going to edit this like a 60-minute interview to make an attack interview. This is to make the best version of you come out. There are oftentimes in our interviews on Comic Lab where someone, a bad word choice or a stumbling phrase, or like they just ended up looking dumb. We're like, there's no reason for that to be on the show. Right. We wanted to talk about the process of making comics and making a living comics. We're just going to excise that completely. And it's a kindness, but it also makes the show better, I think.
Yeah. And in terms of making them more comfortable, one trick that I learned over the years is when you first sit down with them, don't immediately launch into the interview. Take some time to like, talk about them, talk about their day. And one thing that I found helps is if you say something weird or self-deprecating first, because most people, when they come into an interview, they're on high alert. Like, I don't want to say anything weird. I don't want to say anything, that could be misinterpreted or whatever. Right. And so if you break that ice and you go first, it always helps,
What a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I walked into an interview one time and sat down and I just like, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't tell you this, but I have the worst diarrhea right now.
Good Lord.
And the other person was just like, oh, really?
And President Obama was like, oh boy, did not need to know that. All right. Well, that's fine.
I was not on the Obama shoot. There was a BuzzFeed Obama shoot, but I was not.
What was it? Just okay. Fun side note. Would you say Richard Simmons was your most fun interview? What was the most fun interview you ever did?
I didn't actually interview him. I just kind of experienced him. That's the best way I can put it. Okay. That's the best way I can put it. Yeah. It was very briefly. It was my second week on the job. They sent me to do a video with Richard Simmons at his studio. The video was me dancing at him for 60 seconds to see if he can like stay still and not react. And the video ended up turning out fine, but everything around it was an experience.
Okay.
He was on his home turf. He was, performing for,
the cameras were
people
on,
who were there. The cameras were there, and it was the full Richard Simmons experience. And then I kind of became his liaison to BuzzFeed. And it ended up the last time that I saw him before he like withdrew from public life, he showed up unannounced at the BuzzFeed offices in LA. It hits the door open and yells, "I need attention." And we all turned around, and this was like the week before Christmas. God. He sees me and he knows me from the video that we did together. And he makes a beeline over to me, and he gives me a Christmas lap dance.
Oh God!
In front of the entire office.
Oh my God!
And it was very loving. It was very sweet. There was nothing dirty about it or anything like that. But it was very
amazing.
Funny.
That's amazing.
And he was a gem of a person.
And I don't know that we're going to top that in terms of Richard Simmons bursting into a room and saying, "I need attention." Holy hell! I can't imagine. That's a delightful, like a Wednesday at work. How you don't find that at your accountancy office. That's bonkers.
And I'll tell you another way to get people's attention is to tell them that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics. I did it, Dave.
Brad,
I did
see
it.
how it's done, Bradley? That's amazing. Your hosts have been my delightful friend Kevin McShane, sitting in for the wonderful Brad Guigar of webcomics.com and evilcomic.com. But Kevin's work can be found at kevincomics.com, and I highly recommend you jump in on his mailing list. It is a delightful comic. Cannot recommend it enough.
And the other co-host is my friend Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited, and Matt, we hope we did all right with the two of us, was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
And if you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And if you're on Spotify instead of Apple Podcasts, go ahead and do the same thing over there, because every little bit helps.
I like the sort of quiet judgment there. Like, and if you're on Spotify instead of Apple Podcasts, well, listen, I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what's going on in your life, but you can also rate us there. That was great. I appreciated the quiet judgment, Kevin. That was nice. I'm going to say Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. patreon.com/KevinComics.com. Yeah, snuck it in one last time.
Appreciate it. Dave, I'm really proud of us because we talked about comics and comics technology, and we didn't talk about AI.
We didn't. That whole conversation. Yeah. And the bonkers thing is, and tell me if I'm wrong in thinking this, do you a little bit feel like, at least for this first wave of AI, granted, we haven't got to generalized AI yet, but for this first wave of AI, I a little bit find myself tired of it already. And I think a lot of people do, which is sort of encouraging, right? Like, yeah. I'm like, I thought we were going to be wiped out within 6 months. And like, everyone's like, no, I can see what AI is now and what it looks like in it.
Not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it always kind of feels oily and overly polished. And no, it's not for me. I don't like it,
But this is coming from somebody who was on the Mid-Journey training list. Your name was on there, Dave.
I'm unfortunately on all the training lists. I've looked at all of them, but I'm like, ah, shit, there I am again. Ah, damn it, there I am again. Because this is what happens when you make 5,000 comics free to read online, is that, of course, the AI sets are going to be like, yep, I'm taking that for me. But I find so much satisfaction, Kevin, on the fact that they are running out of data to train their AIs with, and it's becoming recursive now. Oh, chef's kiss on, like, I also love that the full sum of human knowledge was not enough to train AI. Yeah. And they're like, well, guess what? That's the smartest way we can make it.
Humans win.
Humans win because that's all we had. Sorry.
Take that, Skynet. Take that, Skynet.
Our combined stupidity didn't let it get to generalized AI. So we won, everybody. Good job.